Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. I'm sitting in this garden in Marrakesh, having just arrived a couple days ago from Portugal, where Cherie, my partner, and I were teaching a Art of Leadership retreat. And it was so amazing, and amazing because of the results and the way how this all transpired and what happens. And while it's still fresh in my mind, I wanted to share with you a little bit about what we use, what the approach was that we use. It's not completely unrelated to the Bloom practice that I've shared here, the way that I work with artists to make their art stronger. But there are some nuances and some differences with this. And I thought in sharing some of the kind of just the steps that we went through over a week, that it might get your wheels turning and start thinking about what maybe would be helpful for you in getting what you desire in your life, in what you want to create. Because the ultimate thing for all of us is our self-expression and what we desire to make, whether that's art or a business or how we want to be in our life. How do we do this? How do we reset? How do we get over being burned out and actually go after what we want? Dreams and desires are left behind certainly as we get older for many of us. And it was such a joy to work with the attendees who came to the retreat. And they came because they didn't want to give up. They didn't want to let go of, or maybe they just had an inkling as to there must be something more. This cannot be it. There's got to be something more for me. And I can imagine many of you who are listening to this have had those thoughts. What I'm interested in art is opening people's eyes as to what's possible for them. And it relates to their life as well. And it relates to leadership. It relates to self-leadership. And so I thought I'd just share just a kind of simple, really simple framework in half an hour here that might get you thinking. So where this all begins, there's no simple way, really, or some external way to go after this. It has to do with your identity. It has to do with how you think about yourself. Obviously, if you feel that you're in a certain situation, if you think of yourself as a non-artist, it's going to be really hard to make art. If you think of yourself as not a creative person, that also is challenging. And as you know me by now, I'm wearing the shirt that says you are a work of art. Creativity is given to all of us in equal measure. Anybody can be an artist. Anybody can make amazing art. And I've spent my life proving that and creating the conditions for people to see that for themselves. So this was a giant realization for me in my 20s when I thought I saw this first for myself and I saw how I was able to do it and then able to teach it and then to see so many people realize this, get over the limiting beliefs of what's possible for them. So where we begin at the retreat, and it's a beautiful process. It has to do with everyone's stories, right? Which is so interesting because we think of attaining success has to do with a certain framework or having enough money or meeting the right person or connections, but it all doesn't really relate to that. And we don't really spend enough time looking at diving into who we are and where we've come from and the stories, our story. I mean, the whole thing. I was a little kid and I remember first memory is I grew up and I had a mom that was like this and my sister was this and my dad. Then this happened and all the twists and turns, especially early on and the career choices we make. So many artists, so many creative people have shared with me that they wanted to do a thing, they wanted to do something like art or design, and they parents didn't want that, or they didn't think it was possible, so they chose something to sort of the side of it, whether it was art history or maybe it was interior design when they actually wanted to be creating things instead of just designing things. They wanted to be making sculpture perhaps, and maybe that was too big of a leap for themselves, for their family, for how the culture sees artists and the starving artists mythology. We know all of that. So we need to share this story. We need to get this story out. And it's kind of terrifying. And I'm not going to share the stories with, because it was done in the privacy and the intimacy of a group. But invariably, tears come because there's hard stuff that we have all gone through, whether the divorcing of the parents, loss of loved ones, or traumatic treatment, right? Trauma from the way we were raised, the way our parents trying but didn't do a good job. All of those stories need to be opened up, need a little bit to work with this. You need to share this a little bit. And here's why, because it's very difficult to see yourself clearly, to choose what to do, just like it's so hard to choose to see your art. Whenever I teach a workshop, and I'll be starting one, I'm here in Marrakesh, I'm starting one on Thursday. One of the first things I'm going to say on that morning is, by the way, I know you're going to be looking around the room at what everyone's making. And just so you know, everyone's art is going to look better than yours. It's just, that's how we're hardwired. And you just have to get used to that. We can't see, and everyone looks at your work and thinks it's better than theirs. It's just who we are as human beings. It's hard to see our own value. I mean, it really is. And that's what mentors are for. And maybe, that's sort of the role I've played for people. It's like, I believe 1000% in what I'm talking about. And if you don't, borrow a little bit of my confidence till you get this thing going. And you don't need it much. You'll have proof. But that's why we take courses. That's why we have teachers. That's why I work with coaches, because they have experience and they can give me confidence, and it moves me along quicker. So we tend to not to share these stories, right? Because parts of the stories are embarrassing. Parts of the stories we have shame around maybe, or they're not, certainly they don't look successful. They're the hard times when we were dorky, when we didn't have friends, right? And so the other thing about stories is, and it was so interesting because we spent a long time really seeing everyone who was there, really learning about who they were. And we get to understand who people are by hearing their stories, by listening to where they've come from and what they've done and who they are. And it's first of all rare that we share them. And it's also really great to have someone just really listening. And here's the other part. And I want to share this because Cherie Healy, who was part of this retreat and was leading it with me and uses story so much in her coaching, was saying, this is such a powerful thing to do at the beginning of a retreat, because nobody can resist falling in love with anyone who is telling their stories. We just fall in love with people when they're telling their stories, what's true for them. And what everybody said before, that we'd listened to these amazing stories. I mean, from all over the world. It's riveting. I mean, we're just hardwired to hear stories. It's so powerful. But everyone, before they started telling theirs, they'd have listened to several people. And they would all say, listen, I've just heard Erica's and Mark's, and I just want you to know, I'm just going to say it up front, like, mine is really flat. It's really boring. Not a lot of shit happens. I mean, Eric's story, there's nothing in my life that's sort of like that. So I just want to let you know, it's just real small, but I'll just tell you really quick. And the story is totally riveting. Everyone's stories are powerful. They're truthful. They move people. I mean, it's hard to not cry when you're hearing somebody tell truthfully what's happening to them. So, you know, part of my story that I shared, because I'll just share as an example, the part that I don't share and don't talk about so much. It was this part around my mother who had borderline personality disorder. She was, and I didn't know, I diagnosed it in my 20s, but she's passed now, and I loved her, and, but so I share this, and there's no shame here. There's nothing embarrassing, but she had a challenging life, and she did not have a lot of self-worth. She needed the buoyancy of other people to reassure her, her children, that she was okay. And with borderline personality disorder, they call it BPD, you really have to provide this. And as a young person, a little kid, if you don't, you might say something that was critical, and she would, throw down the kitchen spoon and walk out. Mom, the cookies aren't, these taste a little salty. And she would leave. She would just go away for 3 days, And so as a little kid, I got really good at making sure she felt loved and saying the right things. And even if I didn't like the almond cake, I wouldn't say that. I would kind of say how much I did love it, because I knew it meant so much to her. Now, this is not a way a kid wants to spend their childhood. And it caused all kinds of challenges. Certainly as I became a teenager and I needed to go away to college, and with my relationships and looking after her from a distance, caretaking someone as a little kid, obviously is not what you're supposed to be doing as a little child. You're supposed to be being looked after, but we all need to be loved, and we all come up with ways to pull that off. There's trauma there and heartbreak, and I felt I couldn't be happy unless she was happy. There's all kinds of things in my story. And this really helps people understand me and see me, right? And so I share that with you because this is the kind of story, this is sort of like kind of telling everything. And when you share this, people feel so close to you. Like this is really me. I'm sharing with this. You guys know something that I don't talk about. And you can't help feeling closer. And it's powerful. And it gives others permission. Not only do they connect with you better, but it gives them permission to share what's going on for them. Like, no one's not normal. And when you hear stories of others who have gone through challenges like you have, it kind of normalizes it. It's so great. And it takes the bugaboo out of it. It takes the shame out of it. It takes the, I've got, my past is kind of rocky. So I don't know if I'm really eligible to be this rock star in the world now because I've had these challenges. So this is this story, and getting this out and sharing it and reflecting on it and not covering it up, not just like, okay, I don't want to think about that, but it has meaning and it's connecting. And especially kind of into the next phase of this. And it's like, okay, given that rough chapter, and we create and do things in our lives that part of that story, right? We become things, we choose careers, it twists and turns. But if you reflect back on when you were most happy and you could wave a magic wand, is something I share a lot. So the next phase of this, the second step of this, is connecting to what you truly want. How do you want to feel? Like, what would be amazing? I know, we have these ideas that we can't have, there's limits to what's possible for us, and we have all these limiting beliefs, and we've been raised a certain way. But relating back to your story, what came out of that, especially the hard stuff, right? For me, I came away with an ability. I'm really good at feeling what somebody else is feeling. I did it with my mom my whole life. So I can empathize and I can feel the energy of other people, which was really helpful in retreats, because I know when someone's having a hard time. I can see it in their work, first of all, but I also can just feel it. And then I can say something that can be helpful, or I can come over and help, or I can write something that I can intuit would be helpful. And that is really helpful. And that's kind of what I do, right? In my life, the essence of Nick is helping people really see the value of themselves, right? See their worth, see their true worth. That's what I'm doing, and I'm using art to do it. That's what I was doing as a little kid. That's what I'm working through. That's what I'm good at. That's what I love doing, right? Like I wanted to just have my mom know that she was worth it, that she had value, that she was amazing. And she had certain challenges that limited that. But she, but this was this became part of what I was here to do. I believe that the reason I was brought here, the reason I went through those difficulties, the reason that I was like working as a little kid on that project was so I could become who I'm here to become. And so there's the trauma leads in a way to purpose. The hard things really are connected to what you're doing now in the world. And so, so that's really, really important to ask yourself these questions. Like, well, who am I? What am I doing? And here again, just like the art, it's very difficult to see this for yourself. I mean, I think it's impossible, to be honest. When we heard the stories of everyone, and we're in a big group, and we've gotten to know each other, and we can share with them how their stories don't totally, how the person's vision of themselves, they share their story, they're in the world, you can feel their energy. The version they have of who they are, it rarely fits who they actually are today. There might be old stories there that your parents said you weren't creative. And so you say, well, I'm going to be an artist, I'm trying to be, but I really don't have a lot of talent. My dad said so, but no, that's not true, right? So how having people reflect back to you who you truly are so you can kind of upgrade that. How would friends describe you? What do you do in your life that is really helpful for people? In art, I take people through the bloom practice, which is based on, first dropping into feeling, not thinking about what you want to create, but how you want to feel. What is the feeling that you want this work to be like? What is the feeling of the best version of yourself? What is the feeling of when you were little or last year, or the best, when you felt your most authentic, most best version of yourself? When did that happen? We always get some hits on that every year. There's certain events, or there's times that you have with your close friends, or maybe it's just walking along a beach. When do you feel most authentic? Because there's all these clues in there. The third part of this then is sort of, after you kind of start connecting with the possibility, like, what is it? What would be the new way you want things to be, right? What would you love to do? What lights you up? What brings you alive? What is the answer to, if you look at the arc of your life, right? And then the third part of this, you kind of grab hold of this and just put practicality. You don't need to answer how you can do any of this. And that gets in the way for people. Like, well, I could never look at, I have a big house and I have to support these kids and I need the banking job. So we're not, if you would love to do art, for example, or you would like to live in Europe and just write, or you love, like, whatever it is, you don't want to get the how involved. We're not going there at all. It's just connecting to what brings you alive. And this is something I say all the time, because there's an energy in this that is incredibly powerful, that is the first step in moving towards this. And it's what brings you alive. So it's different for everyone. And getting clear of this, starting to ask yourself these questions so you can connect to this. putting the reality aside, what would that look like? What could it feel like? And the third part of this is simply creating a new story, right? I call it like, it's like a present life audit of your life. What is it that you are, what's your situation right now? And how does it line up to what you can imagine for yourself? What would be the dream come true, right? And so many people, first of all, the reason we start with kind of letting the story out is that we life beats us up. We're trying to hold it all together, despite the fact that we're holding inside of us what's hard for us. We just soldier on. We soldier on, right? And we try to control things, try to white knuckle things, and disregard who we actually are. And just, I want that job, and I'm going to show up and do this. And we need to connect it back to who we are. That's how we make things more easily. It's like creating authentic art. It has to be of you. In order to do this, you got to figure that out. And once you do, you can crush it making art, but you can't pretend to be something you're not. So now we have to upgrade the story. We have to look at your life, the present life audit, and see it for what it feels like. I mean, we had one of the women in the group had built a huge business and it's incredibly successful. This isn't, by the way, it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with status. It's your soul. It's your heart. What you long for has nothing to do with all the success measurements, right? And she's built this huge business, and it's incredible, right? And we do this. I have spent years doing things that I thought I wanted, or it felt right at the time. But you go along, and suddenly you look and you realize, I should not be doing this. This is not at all how I want to feel. And it's powerful to start asking yourself, what could it look like? And we got to get over what we have this identity, right? The old identity. We can't start creating a new identity because we have friends and colleagues. We're known as the artist. We're known as the banker. We're known as the smartest one in the room, or practical, or we've always done it this way. And maybe our heart longs for something new, for something different. The soul always pulls you to the unknown. It's always pulling you towards growth, towards a more of your purpose. Like, why are you here? Why are you here to do the work? How can you help people in the most powerful way? What is the reason for you to be here? I know it's huge to ask yourself that, but it really relates to where you've been and the little steps. And you start looking at the past through this lens, like, well, why did I stop doing, calculus? And I fell in love with marine biology. And at the time I thought I just wanted to be a marine biologist, but it wasn't the mathematics. It wasn't the science that interested me. It was just the colors, and it was the inspirational, the escape, the adventure. That's why I wanted to become a marine biologist, and I switched to art. Why am I doing this podcast from Marrakesh, right? Because I love travel. I love adventure. I love connecting with people from different cultures. I've always loved that. I love the new and and there's things I did as a kid. I always had forts. I always created trees. I liked doing things, organizing people into groups and going to camp. I love camp, and that's what I'm doing that as an adult. I get to go to camp with a bunch of people in 3 or 4 days, right? But we can also use this information to see and contrast with what we're doing presently that might not fit in, right? Like, maybe I'm doing something, and for me, I'm on purpose. I feel like more and more and more as I've gotten things closer to how I want to be and what I feel my purpose is. What's the essence of me? What do I love doing? I'm doing it. And it's easier. This is so important to understand what can happen just moving a little closer I've always joked, like, if you want to become a zookeeper, well, that's kind of a dream, and that might be hard to pull off that this year. But you can start a scrapbook of other zoos. You can visit other zoos. You can write down all the animals you would have. Just participating in the dream, even in a slight way in your current life, build that in to be part of your life. Then that can help give you more energy. You see, it's the frequency, it's the energy of you being in your fire, you being on purpose, you starting to do things that feel right for you, that feel friggin' amazing, by the way. And that gives you more energy, and that gives you and starts building the new identity. The new identity is created. It's created out of the fire of your becoming. Who do I have to become to achieve these dreams, right? I need to be doing art. I need to go out in the world. I need to travel to places. I want to give people these amazing experiences. Whatever the thing is, you can start there, and it starts giving you more energy. And that is what it takes away the burnout, because you're living the dream, even partly living the dream. The burnout dissipates. And we saw this by the third day in the retreat. People do not even look the same. They do not look the same when they arrive. In 3 days, their whole countenance has changed. It's like this energy and the positivity and the laughter and the acceptance and the closeness. Like, it's pretty simple to kind of get this going, right? But it's so hard to see it for ourselves. It's so hard to see what's possible for ourselves without the reflection of others. And this is why, for all the artists, for all, that I work with, and, Art2Life and the community, and why we created the studio. The studio is a place that people can come, the virtual studio, and they can be making art together, just so you have each other to see what each other is doing and you can share it. It's simply the best. And it leads to this higher frequency, this energy state. And here's what we talked about at the retreat, right? So that's kind of, in a very simplified way, some of the teachings we led them through, and we were doing art around this. We were doing music with this. We were telling stories. We were asking questions. We were all kinds of ways, sharing with each other, partners, and creating the new narrative. Literally, what are the words? Who am I now? Who do I want to become? So when somebody asks you on the elevator, well, what do you do? Instead of saying, well, I started an insurance company. That's, kind of what you've always done. It's like, well, I'm actually, I'm an artist, and I'm creating whatever, or whatever it is. I'm building a new restaurant. I'm becoming a restaurateur, right? It doesn't matter if you're not the thing yet. You have to start occupying that. I hope that's clear, because it's really important. Like, it's the energy you get from living into it. It's called overflow, right? We talk about flow in our art practice, and it's when you forget what you're doing, you're so into it, it's so great, and you need a little bit of challenge, right, to do this, and you lose track of time. But this is like that, but even more. Overflow comes when you're on purpose, when it's on brand, right? The brand of you. What are the clothes you wear? What are the colors you love? What are the places you love to go to? Where do you feel amazing? This is the lens you start curating your life and your art and the things you're creating based on. It's not external, it's all internal, and it's just the coolest thing to discover and learn this for yourself. And when you start getting more energy, you have more logs to throw on the fire, and it blazes bigger. So it's powerful. We have to let go of the limiting beliefs, the starving artist, whatever the things were that you had, to tell yourself the new story, to live into the narrative that you're becoming. And then you start imagining, who do you have to be? It's like, I want to travel all over the world, and I got to be really strong to do that. And I want to be really fit, and I don't want to get sick, because I want to keep doing this, and I'm older, and I'm just getting going. So I gotta get healthy, and I gotta I'm going to learn about supplements. What do I need to take? How do I keep this going? How do I stay healthy? Right. So you see the connection for me. Like, I've always been interested in health because I understand that that's part of the energy, and that allowed me to do more things. So that's part of what I talk about. That's why I'm talking about it right now. I love talking about it, even though I'm talking about art. Anyway, so those are just some of the takeaways, some of the kind of like frame or journey we took with these amazing people, now my friends, in a week in Portugal. And it was just incredible. So I hope that this was, got your wheels turning a little about how you can start cracking the door open to more of what you desire. And this is everything. And it's the reason for Art2Life and all I'm teaching. So I hope this was helpful, you guys. And it's gotten dark here for those of you who are watching. I'm in this amazing garden in Marrakesh. The lights are all the lights going away, and it's just so lovely and warm. And I just love sharing this with you guys. Again, thanks so much for being here. And if you guys could leave a review of this, share it with your friends, subscribe. The reviews really, really help. It turns out that shifts the algorithms, and they send it to more people. When more people come, it allows me to get better guests because there's more people listening. And we have so much to learn together, and I'm so excited. I've got some amazing guests coming up, and I'm excited for these episodes, for sharing those with you. You guys, thanks so much for being here, and I will talk to you next week on the Art2Life podcast. Bye, everyone, and remember, you too are a work of art. All right. Good night from Marrakesh.